Welcome to my webinar today, where I am going to be discussing the 4 key nutritional areas that I believe can really enhance someone's fertility journey. And it is these key areas that I have used to design my new online program, Food for Fertility, which I will also be discussing a little bit with you towards the end of the webinar. But it's not a long presentation. I wanted to keep it quite short, around 15 to 20 minutes, so that people can easily fit it into their day, whether in their lunch hour or in the evening. And I hope that it will answer any questions that you have and give you an overview of these key nutritional areas. But first of all, I just want to introduce myself. So I am Sarah Laver. I founded my company, The Embryologist Nutritionist, a couple of years ago. So I am a trained fertility nutritionist. And I used to be a clinical embryologist many years ago, working in a number of IVF clinics throughout the UK. I also have a love of the science of human behavior and psychology, because no matter how many recommendations I may make to my clients, it's really the implementation of those recommendations that's the magic. That's supporting someone through that is how they're going to actually see those positive changes. And so when I talk about these key nutritional areas to focus on, and in my new program, there are lots of tasks and easy to implement tasks to help someone embed any positive changes into their lifestyle. And you can see there at the bottom right, I love my dogs. So my loves are my family, my dogs, being out in nature, going for lovely walks, and starting the day with a lovely cup of coffee as well. But Food for Fertility. So as I mentioned, I've designed this program to focus solely on nutrition, because I think that this is an area where, first of all, there is a lot of confusion, and people might often feel that they're doing really well, but they might have some room for improvement. And food is so fundamental for health. So it's key for everything, including your fertility. So it's really crucial to get right. And when considering how to support fertility through nutrition, there are 4 key areas that I feel are good to focus on. So the first one is inflammation. And when inflammation becomes imbalanced, or there's a higher level of it, then that can potentially have a negative impact on fertility. The second area is nutrients, and this might sound like an obvious area to look at, but it's doing more than just looking at a high level. It's really looking at the macros, the micros, and how the levels of those nutrients are getting into your diet. The third area is digestion. So again, you can have an amazing diet, but it's understanding the ability of those nutrients from your diet to get into your body, to be able to have those positive impacts on your egg and sperm health. So this is another really key area that is involved with nutrition, and I think is something that people tend to bypass and not really give much space for. And then the last area that I feel is really important is there a need for some extra supplements aside from a really good, varied, balanced diet? And again, there is so much confusion here, and so many differing opinions. So this is something that I felt is really important to consider. So the first area is inflammation, and we're going to go through those 4 areas, just touching on why I feel they are really important. But the first area of inflammation. So if you think of inflammation, you may think of something associated with pain. You twist your ankle, you hurt your knee, a part of your body goes very red because all the blood is flowing there, and that is inflammation. And so inflammation is really necessary in the body to a certain point, because the body is also able to manage levels of inflammation, and it generates its own anti-inflammatory chemicals through our immune system. But if the level of inflammation in the body becomes too high or becomes imbalanced, then that can lead to damage to the cells in the body, and these include eggs and sperm. So the cellular membranes can become negatively impacted, but also it can impact the DNA of the cell. So the genetic material can be damaged as well from having higher levels of inflammation. Now, inflammation is sort of, it can be very, very silent. So I've mentioned when you might realize you have some inflammation in your body, if you've got some soreness, some swelling, some pain. But inflammation can be silent as well, and there can be a low-grade inflammation that is going on in the body that you are not aware of. And this sort of strengthens the reason as to why it's so important to be focusing on minimizing any negative inflammation. And you can see here that inflammation can come from many different areas, from having impaired sleep or working shift patterns can lead to some higher levels of inflammation, from lifestyle, from over or under exercising, from smoking, different illnesses, stress, toxic environments. These can all lead to a higher level of inflammation. But nutrition is one area that can also lead to an increased level of inflammation. And so it's really important to focus on minimizing those foods and products that can increase inflammation and basically bring more of those lovely inflammation supportive elements into the diet. There are some inflammatory infertility conditions like PCOS or endometriosis, and that's also when even more of an emphasis on balancing this inflammation comes into play. And the program that I've developed, Food for Fertility, is going to discuss these particular foods that we want to minimize and foods that we want to bring in. And this is really, it's something that you can control. So potentially there are elements of your lifestyle, your work environment that are out of your control, but your nutrition is something that you really can control. And so you can really support your body's level of inflammation by focusing on eating well. The second area to consider, again, as I say, it's quite obvious, you might think, is nutrients. And here we're looking at the macronutrients, the larger food groups like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, but also the micronutrients. And these are things like your vitamins and minerals. And there are so many different dietary approaches out there that you will come across on the internet. The keto diet, low protein, high protein, low carbs, and it's very difficult to know which is the best approach to take. Now, the macronutrients, they provide the energy for the body. They provide the building blocks for your immune system, for your sex hormones. But there are some forms of macronutrients that are better than others. And it's really important to understand that nuance a little bit more, because if you're eating more of the macronutrients that are not as good for the body, they can basically lead to fluctuations in energy, fluctuations in your hormones that can then have a knock-on negative impact on the quality of your eggs and sperm. So it's really important to understand which macronutrients to be focusing on and what sort of balance. So what should your plate look like from the point of view of how much carbs, how much protein, how much fats? And those are all things that I will be discussing in the program. With micronutrients, these are needed in much smaller amounts, but they are still vitally important for fertility and for health. And there are certain situations that might lead to an increased need for particular nutrients. So different lifestyles, if someone's taking different medications, this can deplete the body of certain nutrients. And so those things sort of you really need to be aware of. And the modern diet and sort of the way that our food is produced nowadays may also potentially lead to reduced levels of these micronutrients. So if you think that you might have some food in the supermarkets that's been sat on those shelves for quite a while, that can lead to a depletion in those micronutrients. If you've had some fruit or vegetables that's been shipped in internationally, again, whilst those fresh vegetables have been making their way to the UK, the levels of nutrient may be depleting. So it's really important to be focusing on the balance of these nutrients and how that can support your fertility. But also something that I cover in the program, which often probably isn't covered in many sort of fertility programs you might find out there, is how the levels of these micronutrients can be impacted by how you prepare your food. And so there are different preparatory methods, different ways of cooking that can either enhance or can lower the micronutrient levels in your food. And some micronutrients are water soluble, so they could leach into the water if you boil vegetables. Some are fat soluble. So it's really important to know and understand how best to pair your foods, how best to cook them, to optimize the levels of those micronutrients that are going to be getting into your body. So again, as I say, this is something that is often not covered, but is really important to understand. The third area is your digestion. So how your food and your supplements are broken down in the body and then absorbed. And you might look at this slide and think, yeah, this scenario looks quite familiar. I've been there with a hot water bottle. I've had the cramping. And digestive issues are experienced by many people. And so you wouldn't be alone. But because they're so commonplace, people tend to accept them as the norm, and it shouldn't be. So cramping, bloating, indigestion, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, having urgency, these are not optimal digestion. And if you experience any of those, potentially there is an impact on how much of a benefit you're actually getting from your diet. And the question here really is, how many of these vitamins, minerals, and nutrients are you actually absorbing? This is so important to understand, because you can be having a fantastic diet, but if you can't absorb those nutrients because your digestion isn't working optimally, then there's no point. We really want to be optimizing the digestive process. So what I will be covering in the program, I'll be going over what a normal, in inverted commas, normal digestion may look like. Now, obviously this is different for different people, but I'll be providing some guidelines on what ideally you should be expecting or not expecting for it to look and function like, which I think some people really like to have that kind of baseline of what they should be aiming for. So frequency of bowel movements, what they should look like, should you have any kind of symptoms at all of digestive symptoms. But also, as well as guiding you on what normal digestion looks like, I'll be looking to show you how you can support your digestive functioning. So both nutritionally and through lifestyle, we'll be covering all of those aspects. And it's really simple steps. It's nothing that is really difficult for you to implement. You're not going to have to make huge changes. It could be something as simple as just making sure that you sit down to eat whenever you have a meal. Literally, something as simple as that can have a dramatic impact on how well your digestive system is functioning. So that is the third really important area to support your nutrition in your fertility journey. And then the fourth area that I feel is really important from a nutritional viewpoint for fertility it's to do with, are there gaps that supplements may be required for? So are there gaps in your diet that just can't cut the mustard and you need to have some extra supplemental help? And I come across so many different social media support groups where somebody will ask, oh, what supplements did you take to get pregnant? And someone will list them all, and then they'll go off and they'll get them as well. This potentially is expensive, and it could be a lot of expense that you don't actually need. So there are certain infertility conditions that do need extra supplemental support. Those kind of situations, it really is best to work on a one-to-one basis with a health professional who can advise you on that. But from a sort of general dietary point of view, it's important to understand whether you can get everything that you need from a nutrient point of view from your food that is going to support the health and quality of your eggs and sperm. And in my opinion, food should always come first. You can't out-supplement a bad diet, so you can't eat whatever you want and think, well, I'm taking these supplements, so I'm actually fine, because the poor diet will be having negative implications on your health. So you can't out-supplement a bad diet. You need these amazing nutrients to come from your food, and they work synergistically. So what I mean by that is there are different vitamins and minerals in the food that you eat that are going to help the absorption of one another. And an example of this is vitamin C and iron. So if you pair those up in a meal, say some lemon dressing on a salad or on some vegetables, it's going to help the absorption of the iron from your vegetables. So it's really important, and it's vital that you eat a great varied diet, and that will support your nutrient intake. However, there are certain nutrients that may need a little bit of an extra helping hand. So there are some that you might not get adequate amounts through your diet. either because they're hard to find in the amounts that you need in your food, or it could be that the body needs extra levels of these nutrients when you're going through a fertility path. And one in particular here that you will be aware of is folate or folic acid. You may be more familiar with that term. And that is something that when you're going on a fertility journey, you would already have been recommended by your GP to be supplementing with, because there are negative implications in pregnancy if you don't get enough folate. So they recommend to supplement to ensure that you are going to have enough level to meet the levels that you need of that nutrient. But also you could have a particular dietary pattern, such as being vegan, that might limit or may not provide all the different nutrients that you need from your food. An example here is B12. So there are some nutrients that are beneficial to take in supplemental form alongside a really good, varied, nutrient-dense diet. And these are ones that I will touch on in the program. So we'll go into more depth about which areas, which nutrients you maybe need to be looking to supplement alongside your diet. So these really are why these 4 key nutritional areas are the ones I feel are really important to focus on. They all play such a vital role in supporting fertility, and they really are very, very foundational. And if you can get these fundamental areas covered, then you can be really confident that you're getting all the vital nutrients in your diet, that your body is able to absorb all of those nutrients, and you're really going to be supporting your egg and sperm health. And that's why these are the areas that I go into a lot more depth in my new program, Food for Fertility. And why did I put this together? I really wanted to be able to reach more people with this information rather than just my one-to-one clients, because not everybody can afford to work with me one-to-one, or it might just not be, they might not feel ready to do that at this moment in time. So I really wanted to bring these areas together and put them in one place that people could easily access. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm really wanting to take you from feeling like this to feeling like this, to feeling so much more confident. It's about removing that overwhelm of just not knowing where to go, which dietary pattern to follow, to cut through all that conflicting advice, and to really provide you with lots and lots of support, of which there's plenty available on my program. And the reason I'm doing that is because I really, really want you to feel empowered with your choices, confident that you are making the right choices, and that you are doing everything that you can to support your egg and sperm health and your fertility, and therefore really hopeful that you've taken back some of that control when there are other things that are out of your control, and hopeful for the future. So a brief overview of how the program is going to run. It's going to be made up of live sessions, a couple of live sessions each week over the course of 4 weeks, and they're going to be very short sessions, no longer than sort of me talking for about 15 to 20 minutes with time for questions afterwards. And they're going to contain really easy to action tasks that's going to help to remove that overwhelm. It's not going to be overwhelming for you, but it's going to help you to process those different steps and different stages, and to understand more about where you need to be putting a bit of extra focus. There's also going to be a private Facebook group. So again, there'll be sessions in there where I'm providing more support for you. You'll be able to be part of a supportive community. There's lots of resources that are going to be available to support you through this journey. And they are going to be within a private portal, which you can download as a free app on your phone or on your device. So you can have access to all these resources and all the course content wherever you are. And there are more opportunities for support through that portal because there's a chat function. So you can message me privately, or there is a group chat there as well. So as I say, there is so many places for support because that's really what I want to be providing to you over those 4 weeks. There's also going to be a 4-week meal plan that can support you through the program. Now, some people love meal plans. They want to be told what to do. Other people, not so much, but they might like a bit of inspiration. And the program is going to follow a particular dietary strategy that's going to help to work to reduce levels of inflammation. And so the meal plan is going to reflect that. So it's going to provide you with lots of recipes for 28 days that you can either utilize in full or dip in and out of, but gives you those ideas that you can then implement. And also there is going to be a guest expert coach session. So we have a guest expert coming in who's going to really be supporting you with some coaching strategies to help with the mindset element of being able to make these changes and feel positive about them. Now, until Friday, until the 31st of May, there is still the early bird price available. So if this is something that you're wanting to look to join, then I would definitely recommend that you do that before the end of play on Friday, because up to that point, the price is £97. That covers the entire 4 weeks of support and guidance from me. But after Friday, the price then will go up to £169. So if you are interested, I would recommend sort of making that decision this week to get in at the early bird price. And the doors will close to the programme to signing up on the 14th of June, which allows for a week of introductions, and then the course content actually starts on the 24th. So these are a couple of ways of signing up. If you want to, you can scan the QR code, or there is the link there. And if you go to those pages, you will be able to get a lot more information and find out more about how the course is structured and how it can potentially support you on your fertility journey. But thank you very much for joining me. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and send them through.